Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's Safer Sim webinar. Today we have Dr. Kara Hammond of the University of Iowa. She will be presenting her project, Global Road Safety Online Course Development. This project involved the adaptation of an in-person classroom materials and the development of new materials to be used in an online setting. So she's going to tell us about the development and a little bit about the results of the pilot class that was held online. So with that, thanks again for everyone joining, and Kara, you can take over from here.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Yes, today I'd like to share with you kind of our process for developing a class that was in person into online and kind of where we went with it. So I'll just move forward. So just a little background. The reason we wanted to do a class like this is because global road safety, so traffic injuries and fatalities, are a large burden of injury and death globally, and we know that this topic has a high global health priority. And so we've taught this in person at the University of Iowa, but we wanted to expand our reach beyond Iowa throughout the U.S., but also even internationally. And so that's why we wanted to turn to an online format. Um, we want to cover introduction to the status of road safety throughout the world, research methods related to global road safety, and then how to prevent and intervene in this area. So our overall goal for this project was to increase the reach of our course, both geographically but also across disciplines. So our target audience, we still wanted to include students, but we also wanted to expand this to professionals and have as wide a range of fields as we could. So we really marketed this course to fields including public health, nursing, medicine, geography, international studies, urban and regional planning, engineering, social work, psychology, sociology, global health studies, health promotion, health studies and leisure studies, and I know I'm probably missing some there as well. But really all encompassing because we know that research and work in this field is really multidisciplinary, so we wanted to reach all those different sectors. So we did two things to accomplish this. But we were taking content that we already had that worked in person and adapting that for use in the online setting. But then we also created just brand new material for this as well. So for the curriculum development itself, our goals were to create interactive material and use discovery-based teaching methods. So we didn't want to just talk at the students. We wanted to get them involved. We did use some mini lectures because there was certain content that just worked best in that format. And we wanted to do a synchronous remote learning environment that had interactive capabilities. So this is somewhat different from other online learning. Here, we wanted students to actually log in together at a certain time point and be able to talk to each other. So it was really kind of similar to maybe how you would do a conference call where everyone's on at the same time, rather than having students just access online material, which you would call it asynchronous, where they go through the material themselves and then maybe do assignments and get feedback on those. So we wanted it to be interactive and synchronous. And our original goal when we first proposed this project was to create an academic credit online course. So really taking the in-person academic credit semester-long course and changing it to online. We through For a number of different reasons and roadblocks, we changed this to be a certificate-based short course. And some of the roadblocks that we ran into in terms of offering this as an academic credit-based semester-long course included it was a high cost to students, both to University of Iowa students and non-University of Iowa. We also had ran into difficulties, and we got as far as we had the course offered and started having people try to enroll, and we ran into these issues. So we had difficulties for both UI and non-UI students to enroll. There was a complex application and registration process. So even like for example, non-UI, we had a non-UI student try to enroll who happened to be a student at another university in the US, but was an international student. And in order to enroll, had to submit transcripts to us here at the university and some like go through a whole non-degree seeking student enrollment process. So really the bar was just way too high to get people enrolled. And we also had scheduling challenges. People weren't willing to commit to a semester long course, and this was particularly problematic among professionals, and that was a group that we did want to reach. So based on all those things, we changed our focus and we decided to make it a short course format and open it to both students and professionals, make it easy to register, and um, have it not be academic credit based. Instead, it was certificate based. So we created a curriculum that had 4 online sessions that were 2 hours each, so it was a total of 8 hours of training. For our platforms, we use Zoom video conferencing, so that was our virtual classroom, and that gave us some great options. In Zoom, you can do breakout rooms. So in our in-person class, we often have students do work or activities in small groups, and we wanted to maintain that option in the online setting. So Zoom allowed us to do that through their breakout room feature. And then Zoom also has some other interesting things like um, whiteboard options where you can have students, you can have them be in the breakout rooms, but they can write on a virtual whiteboard. We again in person we use whiteboards in the classroom a lot, so that it was nice to translate some of this to the online setting. We also use the University of Iowa's Icon software program, which is based on Canvas learning management system, and this allowed us to create a course website. And through the course, which is there's a picture here on the slide, here we were able to populate a getting started page that gave students instructions about what to do before the course started, also what technical requirements they would need for their computers, including things like having audio and video capability. And then we listed information like readings and outlines and things for the different modules. Discussion forum, one of the things we asked students to do before the class started was to get onto the course website and get onto a discussion forum where we had them introduce themselves and upload a picture. And then we also used this platform to get feedback from the students. So we had them complete surveys throughout the course and at the end to help us evaluate. And we'll go over those results later. So here are our 4 sessions. Our first session was covered an introduction to the burden of injury related to road traffic injuries and fatalities, and also another section on data sources. So here are our learning objectives. First and foremost, we introduced students to the virtual classroom and gave them an overview of our expectations and kind of how the course would work. And then we wanted them to be able to describe the global burden of road traffic injuries and fatalities, discuss regional variations and trends globally, identify sources of crash and injury data, understand differences in data collection and quality throughout the world, and then identify and define variables that are important to understand what the causes and outcomes of road traffic crashes. So our outline for this, we started the whole course after we introduced everyone to the virtual setting. We just started with a really easy, fun icebreaker, and we used this website called GeoGuessr. And this top right hand picture is an example. What it does, it's just a fun little program that it will give you a snapshot of somewhere in the world, and you can move the picture around and you can go up and down the road. It uses Google Maps as its interface. And what it wants you to do is guess where in the world that picture is or where it has put you. And and really the purpose of doing this was as an icebreaker, but also to get students to start thinking about what are um, what are different features of roadways and road environments, and we didn't just have them guess where this was. We also discussed things like what about this picture makes this roadway safer or unsafe, etc. So we started there. This session had two mini lectures about 7 to 10 minutes each. So we talked about the current state of global road safety and then data sources and coding. And really the bulk of the sessions were interactive and activity based. So the activity for this course was conceptual models for road safety risk factors, and we had them break them into small groups and then use the whiteboard feature, talk about conceptual models, and then regroup as a large group. And this was a common way we did all of our activities. And they were able to talk to each other um, in the breakout rooms and in the larger group. So as long as they had their video and audio feeds working, that worked really well. There's also a chat feature in Zoom, so if for some reason their audio wasn't working, they could use that as a backup. Our next session covered traffic safety culture and policy. For this one, we wanted them to understand what is traffic safety culture, essentially, how safety culture changes or does not change over time, what are the different levels that make up traffic safety culture, and how policy plays a role, and then also talk or understand the impact and effectiveness of policy-based interventions and policy-based solutions for road safety problems. So more specifically, what we did in that class was we started with a mini lecture just to get everyone on the same page about what traffic safety culture is. And then we did an activity where we used the social ecological model, which is, this is a rendering of it, the top right figure there, and traffic photos. So we first started with a full class discussion and then split into small groups, and we gave each group different pictures like the one here, and what they were to do was think about things in that picture and how they relate to the social ecological model. Then we had a mini lecture on policy and had an activity about policy-based interventions. They had to come up with a policy-based intervention, and again we did this in small groups first and then came back as a large group to share. Our third session, here we went into epidemiology, research methods, and mapping. This session was really jam-packed, and we'll get into some of our challenges later and how we might change things, but I'll just tell you what this included. So we wanted students to understand how epidemiology fits with global road safety, what are common research study designs, advantages and disadvantages to those designs, and then we went into naturalistic and simulation approaches and some details of those. So for that session, we started with a mini lecture on epi methods. We did an activity where they had to calculate rates. So this was really to stress the importance of data and the importance of exposure data and how your rates can change depending on what denominator you use. And then we also had them think about having, if they had a symbolic $100, we gave them a list of countries and a list of data about different rates and numbers in those countries in terms of road safety, and they had to think about how they would divvy up a symbolic $100 to those countries and why they would give potentially certain countries more money than others to improve road safety, and maybe some countries no money. And so that really was a fun way to get them to think about things. Then we had a mini lecture on naturalistic and simulation research methods. And finally, we had kind of a workshop where we taught them QGIS, which is an open source version of, it's sort of an open source version of ArcMap GIS. And the reason I really wanted to do that was so, since it's a free program, after they learned it in this class, they could just download it on the computer and run with it. They wouldn't have to worry about buying it later. And also it works, it's able to be accessed in multiple countries. Oh, and I didn't, I'll get to this later, but we did have a couple international students that were in our class. So we taught them how to do a dot map and a choropleth. The picture of the map here is a choropleth. We used Iowa crash data as our example just because that was readily available and downloadable through a website. So that was what we used to have them practice with. And then our last session focused on intervention and prevention approaches. So here we wanted them to understand crash factors and how they contribute to the chain of events, um, have them be able to give examples of intervention approaches and how different intervention approaches in terms of educational interventions, engineering, enforcement policy, and evaluation and planning. We talked about Haddon's 10 countermeasures, also different theories of behavior change, and finally wanted them to be able to develop a communication plan for increasing road safety. So for that session, we did a few lectures here. So mini lecture on intervention and prevention approaches, then kind of a more detailed kind of a case study of multi-component interventions. We had a guest lecture, which was Dan McGeehee, and he talked to the class about automated vehicles and road safety. And then we finally did an activity where they had to develop a communication plan for improving a driving behavior or issue related to autonomous vehicles and road safety. And this, we really chose that specific topic because it related to the guest lecture, but as you can imagine, you could kind of adapt this to be a communication plan for some other topic area. So we developed the content, and then we did this short course pilot. So we made a flyer. We did this last April. We recruited via word of mouth, email listservs, the SaferSim newsletter, and a flyer. And we did our registration through Eventbrite, which was also free and easy. We had 22 participants. We actually, I think, had 27 people register, but a few dropped out or different things happened. And so we had 22 people actually participate. 16 were students, 6 professionals, 20 were domestic, and 2 international. And they represented people from urban and regional planning, emergency medicine, engineering, human factors, law enforcement, and public health. So here's some results. So about almost 70% of participants completed the entire course, which I mean they were at all of the 4 sessions, and we were able to give them a certificate. We had a number of others who completed several of the sessions, but maybe missed 1 or 2. And throughout the whole process, we actually, and I didn't list this on a slide, but we actually did give them incentives to participate in this pilot. So we sort of paid them to participate, and we really did that so that we could count on them to complete the evaluation surveys, so we can find out if they really if the content and the style of the course is really working for them. So we asked them to complete a pre-course survey, survey at the end of each session, and then at the end of the course. And so mostly we asked things like about each session: what did you like about this? What did you not like? And what would you change? So really simple. So some of the things they liked was the interactive nature, so the breakout groups, the discussion, and the activities. They really liked the icebreaker GeoGuessr activity, and they seem to like the technology and the format. So again, they mentioned the breakout groups, and they seemed comfortable with the technology. Dislikes, and they like the technology, but they also dislike some things about it. So actually, most of the feedback that was a dislike about the technology was either the very first session where they were just figuring it out, and then there was a common theme, and this is not really the technology's fault, but more participation. So we asked everyone before they signed up, and we had the technology requirements listed that they would need to have audio and video, but there were always people who logged on and either didn't have video or didn't have audio or didn't have it turned on or both. And so that was problematic because because this was a totally voluntary participation, there was no grade or anything, we didn't feel like we had a good way to get people to really do that if they didn't want to. We also jam packed some of the sessions where we ended up being rushed. In particular, session 3, where we had the mapping tutorial, we ran out of time on that, so we were only able to totally complete one of the maps and not the other. Although we did provide a written tutorial, so they were able, if they wanted, to go later and work through that themselves. And we also had some people who, once we broke them out into the small groups, just wouldn't participate. And we're not sure if they just they were there and not contributing, or their computer was logged in and they weren't actually there. And then there were a few people that were confused about the symbolic $100 activity, and I think this was mostly because it was rushed a little in how we had to explain it. So I think we could do that better next time. Excuse me. So suggested changes. After 1 or 2 sessions, we had a couple people ask if we would be recording. Excuse me. The cough. And we decided to record the last 2 sessions so they could watch it later. We also had some people, we didn't require any readings or homework before or after. Pardon me. But there were some people who wanted more work, and we also had people who requested having a break. And there were some common themes of wanting more in-depth information, more advanced discussions, more time. And I think all of this really lent itself to the fact that this would make a good semester-long course, because there's only so much you can pack into 4 sessions. And then one thing we did with the small groups is we asked them to self-assign their group roles, and they gave us feedback that they wished that we would have assigned those. And then just some details on the content of the course website, and those are easy things to fix. Okay. Oops. And then the overall feedback, we had 73% of people completed the overall course survey at the end. 100% said they would recommend the course to others. About half said they would be willing to pay to take the course, and they suggested that they would pay between $150 and $300. But interestingly, 75% said they would take it for academic credit. So apparently they don't tie taking this for academic credit to paying, which I thought was funny. Also, 100% said they would take it for continuing ed credits. In areas like civil engineering, safety and asset management, planning, American Planning Association, professional engineering licensure, etc. Okay, some feedback on the course format. 75% said the length of each session was just right, but 70% said there were just too few sessions, and most people were satisfied with the Zoom and icon platforms for the virtual classroom and the course website. Although some people reported that they had technical difficulties with Zoom, but they reported things like video lag or browser trouble between the desktop version and the mobile version, and then unstable connection. So it really seemed to point to issues with their internet connection or their own computers, and not necessarily Zoom itself. And people seemed satisfied with the course website content as well. And here you can see on the right, we had like on this particular moment when this snapshot was taken, about half of us had video connection and the other half are just little um, avatars because they either don't have video or don't have it turned on. About half reported that there were topics they thought we didn't cover or they would have liked to learn more about, and those are the list here are the areas they wanted to know more about. And some of these could definitely be a whole class on its own, like road design, human factors. Um, and some of these we did touch on, but we just didn't have a chance to go into depth. So it was interesting to see what feedback they give us here. So challenges and lessons learned. Time was an issue, and I think that's mostly because we were trying to pack so much into a short thing. And the virtual classroom was challenging mostly because of participants and people who either didn't have audio video or didn't turn it on. And we did get some feedback that there were some people that um, had audio and video, but were in like a shared office and didn't feel comfortable turning it on. So they would use like headphones and they could hear us, but they didn't want to turn their audio on and talk to the computer or have the video on. Another thing we asked them to do before the class started was to pick a focus country. And this is something that we've done in our in-person class. But our in-person class is semester long and we have homework assignments, and it seems to work really well so that they can kind of go more into depth in one country. And we also use it a lot of times for activities. But in this case, especially in this short format, it didn't seem as useful. We used it a couple times, but we might want to revisit that. I think it works better in the semester long format when they have assignments they can tie that country to, etc. Also challenging was just in general kind of trying to cater to everyone because we had a wide range of skill level and experience and disciplines, etc. So some of the content might have been too introductory for some that are more advanced, and this also varied by what topic we were talking about. And so some reflections overall and future directions. We really think the pilot was a success and we successfully developed the curriculum. Um, we would continue to move forward. We would continue with the interactive approach and small group work, but we need to build in some accountability. And we think that probably if people were paying us to take this course or had a grade tied to it, we that would give us more um, to lean on in terms of making sure that they are participating and have the appropriate technology. And we might need to increase the overall course time, but not the individual session time based on the feedback we got. And we want to still move forward with trying to offer this as an academic credit based full length online course, but we do see that there is a need and interest in this other version where it's more of a certificate based approach. And I think that's especially desirable to professionals, for example, who might not want or need the academic credit and might not be able to commit to the long semester long time frame. So with that, I want to acknowledge my co-investigator and also co-instructor, Dr. Corey Piquesa, and funding for this project was provided by SaferSim. And I want to thank all of the participants who took part in the pilot short course. So with that, I will be happy to take any comments or questions from you. And I see, so Leslie, I'm just looking at the comments right now. So we actually did try to go through distance continuing ed when we first offered this. And um, because she's suggesting we go through distance continuing ed here. And part of our problem, our roadblocks with the high cost was really specific to the offering this course through the College of Public Health. And I won't even go into details, but we, for some reason, have a really weird fee structure. Um, and then I missed how long each session is. Each session is 2 hours. And okay, any other questions? Don says, I'm very interested in this as continuing education through teach externships. Yeah, I think we definitely are interested in trying to figure out how to make this work again as kind of continuing ed or a certificate based program. We think there is definitely enough interest. We actually had we had, I think, 10 or 11 people on a wait list for this before we started the course. So there's, uh, there's a lot of interest. Leslie asked, do you think this would be appropriate for high school teachers, um, science, engineering, getting students college and career ready? Um, that is a good question. I think it could probably be adapted for high schoolers, but some parts of it might be a little advanced for them. But I think it's doable for sure. I see that people are typing, so I'm just waiting here. Yep, Don says I'd like to discuss how to adapt and expand. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in doing that. I actually just had a student email me, and I'm not even sure where he saw the flyer or how he found out info, but he was hoping that we were offering the short course again this spring. And I said, no, that was last spring. Um, and we don't have any plans right now to offer it again, but we would really like to find out how to make that work because I know there's still interest. Hmm. Yeah, Leslie, I'm that would be great to connect. So she like 500 teachers would be interested as a way to expose students to these career options. Yeah, I do think it might be a neat way to introduce people to this area because like road safety, it's so interdisciplinary that it's introducing them sort of to the field or topic, but they could take it and go into a lot of different disciplines in terms of study. Right, and high school students don't know what public health is, human factors, etc. Yeah, so it would introduce them to a lot of different fields, which would be really cool because they might not think about how a lot of the or they might not know about the fields or how those fields connect all to one topic like road safety. Yep, partnering with other safer sim teams would be cool too. And we did some of the students that were in our pilot course are safer sim students from the other institutions. Sounds good, Leslie. Yep.
And Leslie, I'll be sure to send, I can send you an email and have Kara included on it, unless, I mean, I'm sure you can find her email elsewhere too, but I'll be sure to connect you afterwards.
Cool.
All right, well, thank you for the discussion.
Yeah, thanks
I
everyone
guess,
for listening.
yeah, thank you, Kara. It was a great presentation, interesting work, and obviously, there's, like you said, there's a lot of interest in it from students and from professionals. I can see a lot of value in it. And as Leslie is saying too, there could be some interest from high school students as well. So I
Yep,
think there is a lot of ways to grow and expand from what we have a solid foundation, but there's always ways to expand and
definitely.
get better, I guess.
Yep.
Um,
Sure.
but I think that's everything. I do want to get a little pitch in for our next webinar, which is on Tuesday, April 10th. That's a UCF presentation. But other than that, this presentation will be up online by the end of the week if you do need to go back and look through anything or re-listen to it. So thanks everyone for joining, and thanks again, Kara, for the presentation. See you next time. Thanks.